I think so. Thank you. Is the mayor still there? Yeah, can you I know, but in order for it to work.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Hollister Planning Commission on 8/28/2025. The meeting is now called to order and it is 6:05. Want to welcome everyone and then remind our commissioners to turn their mic on so that we can hear everyone. And also welcome our new commissioners. Welcome. And staff, can we have roll call?
Yes, Vice Chair Carla Torres Luna,
Here.
Commissioner Damien Perez,
Here.
Commissioner Julio Rodriguez,
Present.
Commissioner Peter Hernandez.
Here.
Chair Stephen Belong does not seem to be here today.
And then can we stand for the pledge of allegiance and who would like to lead us?
I can be. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item. This is public comment on the agenda that's not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to staff before speaking. When the commission secretary calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the commission. If you're joining us by Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you're joining us by Zoom using a cell phone, please press *9. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any news?
We do not have any speaker cards.
Thank you. Next item is our consent items. Do we have any questions from the commission on the items on the consent agenda? Or are there any items that the commission would like to pull for further discussion?
Madam Chair, my only thought is, I wasn't here for the August 15, 26 meeting, so it's hard for me to agree or approve, but I would like to. Yeah, in the month of Columbia, I would like to official.
6.2, okay. Anyone else, other comments or any other items? Is there, so do we have any public comments on the consent agenda?
We did just get an email about 5 minutes to 6 for item 6.2, a written comment from Alex Silak, so we will make sure copies of that are amended to the agenda.
Okay. So when will we get those?
Did receive them by email, and we've also copies.
Okay. And so now that we pulled 6.2, is there something procedure? Do we do a motion to approve the agenda?
Yeah, you'll still do a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is now just a minute.
Okay.
And then And then you'll treat 6.2 like a business item, and you'll hear staff report, take other comment, questions.
Okay, and where would we put that one?
Just right after the.
Right after.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll second.
I think we need a motion first. You make a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt, consent agenda 6.2. 6.1.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? So we have. This is, so then now, we can move to 6.2.
Yes, thank you. So this item is pulling back from the June 28th discussion of the planning commission regarding an appeal that was filed for a fence extension application that was denied by the engineering department on Carriage Road. And this item is at the June meeting, staff provided a recommendation and a resolution for denial of the project. During the public hearing and following the public hearing, the planning commission elected to approve the appeal, and they made findings in your motion, and staff indicated that we would draft those findings as we understood and heard them, but before we got the resolution finalized and signed, we would bring those findings as we have written them based on your verbal motion back to you. So this item is just to administratively confirm that the language we drafted is in fact how you understood the motion. And then I would say, because we understand that we have two new commissioners, I would leave 2 to 3 votes to just affirmatively confirm, but I think we could discuss, and if there were any concerns with the language, definitely those changes.
Other questions or comments?
So where in the whereas is the, are these findings?
So the findings are in the attached resolution that was attached to the staff report. Yeah, so staff has drafted resolution 2025-16, which indicates that as in the situation that has happened, most of these are reflected from the previous draft. However, instead of the resolution behind the project, which was drafted by staff, this is a resolution which will approve the project with the finding of the on page 3 under A.
This is just to approve, an essential plan.
So a fence was built at this property, and then it was cited by code enforcement because the fence was built within, it is a corner lot fence. The city's code requires engineering approval to build a fence taller than 3 feet within the 10-foot setback of the property line on a corner lot. This fence was built without approval of the engineering department. Then they applied for, in response to code enforcement action, they applied for a request to get approval by the engineering department, but the fence was placed within a public utility easement, and so engineering could not approve the fence where it was already located. They denied that permit request, and then the denial was appealed to the commission, where staff recommends denial of the appeal to uphold staff's decision with this finding commission just to make a finding specific to this case to allow the fence.
If I could add, just to kind of, we reviewed this several months, and we did a lot of conversation on this, a lot of dialogue. What we found, you will both find this very, I think, relevant and interesting. The developer who's the developer about, so there was misleading information, and correct me if I'm wrong, when the plans were approved by the city, it was not accurate. number one, right? So right off the gate, the fencing is not correct from the maps that they had to the reality. And we found out because some of the homeowners took pictures. But then you all provided aerial footage from years ago, right? That also validated that. So there was that we were like, oh, so there were some mistakes made there by the developer, right? So, so we thought, fairness for this particular situation, we thought, to go ahead and do this one.
There's no safety, yes, but it's just the higher.
The engineer, presented, he talked about safety, but I went up there myself, I'm like, I gotta see this. And I didn't think that, I'm not an engineer, but, I don't think that it's necessary.
And I would just add that the decision, it has already been made, the appeal is already upheld. We're just confirming that the language, because if there was no draft, this language.
So just one final question, so why?
The fence is within the 10-foot setback and within a public utility easement.
There's no safety.
The engineering department determined that the fence did not meet the code requirement. Access to the utility.
The other thing I think both of you should also be aware of is there are other homeowners where the fences need to. So they brought that up as well, just for your background. I mean, this is all in public, not on the internet, but I think, again, knowing that the developer had a responsibility, I think is key for both, for all of us. So then procedurally, do we make a motion as for if we're gonna approve?
First, we'll call for public comment.
Oh, thank you. Is there public comment on this item?
I'll just restate, just because we did the consent public comment, but there was a written comment email received from Alex.
When we get those, do we don't read those as long as we,
do not read them into the.
thank you. Is there a motion? They were confirming the language. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Abstention? Okay, thank you. Next item is Eden Housing, and this is a public hearing, and then we have the staff report.
Is it not working? No. Okay, just tell me next when you want the next slide.
The item before you is an amendment to an approved project, we refer to it as Eden Housing. It's for a 100 unit multi-family apartment complex. Shown in the blue square on your screen, it's within the West of Fairview specific planning area, which includes a number of single-family residences. It includes some cluster lots for TV that are almost completed. And most of those single family is done in the area. There is phase 3, which is the phase of single family. That should be seen. The subject site is again part of the West of Fairview specific plan. There's a development agreement in place, and both the specific plan and the development agreement call for 100 affordable units to be constructed in that location. The applicant received prior approval from the planning commission for the multi-family project on receive approval of the multifamily project, including a density bonus, which was for reduced setbacks. Since then, the applicant has applied for an amendment to the approved architecture, to the modifications to the north sign, has increased the number of compact parking spaces, and has increased the total landscape area. There are no changes to setback, lot coverage, or overall layout of the project. The reason this is back before you is because our code requires that any amendment to an approved site architectural review requires any commission review approval if it is visible from the public right of way. This one is- So the overall design of the project has been modified. The roof pitch has been significantly modified and from relatively flat roof to the roof that you see above. We have changes in the articulation of the site. So there is a different articulation, there's more articulation. This is a rendering of what you would see from Cesar Chavez and Hibiscus. Because when you look at the elevations, it's a little bit harder to see all the detailing on the building, but the detailing is better shown on this, and then the next slide that is the front elevation. And again, it's a little bit harder to see, you can see the full elevation of that street, which on this elevation, Hibiscus Drive, their community buildings. Moses Street, which is their rear elevation, again. Yes, you can see again the different articulations of the building, the varying heights, and so. With regards to parking, the proposed project will have 192 parking stalls, which is 40 more spaces than they are required. That does not change from the approved project. They are, however, proposing to increase the number of compact stalls so that 29% of the total parking stalls will be compact, and that is lower than what the municipal code limits, which is 40%. And by increasing the number of compact stalls, they can actually increase the landscape area, so less paving on site. This project was reviewed under the prior environmental impact report and supplemental impact report for West of Fairview. Both of those documents were certified by the city council, and any mitigation measures that are applicable to the site will continue to apply to this project once construction begins. The proposed project meets the requirements of the general plan and municipal code for West of Fairview specific plan. The Housing Accountability Act requires approval of housing projects that comply with the municipal code general plan and any other applicable. The Housing Accountability Act limits discretionary review of design of residential projects unless there are objective design standards, which the city does not have right now. So we have to review it against the policies that we have in the general plan. And then in this case, there is a specific plan, and it does comply with the. So staff is recommending.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission?
So one of the amendments, just want to clarify, does pertain to parking. Correct?
It increases the number of compact spaces.
So when we say increases the number of compact spaces, that also increases the number of spaces overall as well.
No, they increased the percentage overall, so they took away some regular parking spaces and switched them to compact, so it's a smaller area. And by changing that, let's say land or the space necessary on a site plan for the wider and longer space, they reduced it, and then that reducing decreases the paving area in the site.
Okay, so. Okay, got it. So I interpreted that as like, for example, I got a pizza, right? We're increasing the number, we're not increasing the number of slices, we're actually decreasing the size of the actual pizza.
Yeah,
correct?
that's like a large.
Okay. I have some issues with the parking requirements. I understand that there is no such thing as free parking, that may pertain to San Francisco, San Jose, transit, development, other ways of transportation. I think in San Diego County, I've heard this argument that poor people they don't drive, they can't afford a car. I don't find that. I don't find those studies very convincing, at least within our county. So that does worry me. And I just want full disclosure. I do live on Sausalito, so this project is right by my house. I can tell you right now, about 10 years ago, when I was in high school, that the number of street parking has decreased because, I'll be transparent, I still live at home because, so I have a car. So okay, that's me and my sister, that's 2 extra cars. So that pattern, I think, has repeated itself within that subdivision because there has been an increase in off-street parking. So the same case is also going to happen here, where you're going to have a couple families living in these apartments because, correct me if I'm wrong, when we say affordable, that's based off of the HUD's definition of affordability, correct? And what is the current area median income of San Benito County?
We've spent 2024, and I was just speaking with our housing programs manager the other day, and she indicated that it did not change, but I haven't looked at the 2025 numbers, but it was $140,200 for a family home.
Okay, so about $140,000. So if you really think about it, these aren't. I mean, you still have to be making a lot of money to be within that threshold, or like. I guess what I'm trying to paint for the public as well is, I think a lot of people think, affordable housing is going to be, people making, not a lot of money, but people still keep making a lot of money. And that's the part that worries me is you're going to have multi-generational people living in these apartments, and then we want to decrease the parking.
So if I can, we're not decreasing the total number of parking. So the original project was 192 stalls, which is 40 stalls more than the code requires. The current project is 192 stalls, which is 40 more than is required. You're just switching the size of the parking spaces, which does meet our code. So it meets our code, which says no more than 40% of a parking lot can be designated to compact stalls. The reason we don't allow 100% is because not everyone drives a small car. There are still bigger cars in this world.
Especially in our town.
And we know there are bigger cars everywhere. It kind of doesn't matter where you go. But we limit it to 40%. They're at 29%. They're well under that. And then again, they exceed the parking requirement by 40 stalls.
I would think they're around 2 stalls per unit.
Yeah.
2 stalls per unit. Over 100.
Under it, so we have almost 2 stalls per unit. 'Cause
So, and
you have a mix of bedrooms.
And the so the average square footage of the property of the unit?
I don't know off the top of my head. Ian probably has it more off the top of their head, but we don't go by unit size of square footage. We go by number of bedrooms in our municipal code. And it's important to know they exceed the requirements of the municipal code.
So what is it?
It's,
I believe it is 1.5 parking spaces per 0 to 1 bedroom, and then, or 0 to 2 bedroom, and then for 3+ bedrooms, it's 2 parking spaces per, and for multifamily, it's a guest parking requirement for 1 space for every 4 units. Although because this is an affordable project, it's the bonus, there is a reduction on, I believe, the 2 bedrooms becomes 1.5, and then 1 bedroom becomes 1. So, but either way, as Erica mentioned, this project is in excess of the required parking that we have to.
If I may, what is the process? The reason why I guess I like having a bigger space is because then if let's just say they need to restripe some of these spots to be more compact, at least you have the space. So is there a process? So let's just say they keep it the way it is. Push comes to shove, okay, we're gonna need more parking spots. Do they have to apply that to the city that says, hey, we can actually increase the parking by making some of these compact? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is once you you, change something, structurally, with pavement, things like that, you therefore limit what you can do in the future because it becomes cost prohibitive to then change it. I don't know if that makes sense. That's why you make pizza now.
I mean, I kind of think I understand where you're going. If they were to change it in the future, they would have to go through the city for any changes that they wanted to do. But again, they need the code, and Housing Accountability Act, is very specific on how we can deny a project. And this is not a reason we can deny it. Now, if in the future they came to me and said, Erica, I would like to restripe my entire parking lot and make it 100% compact, we would say we are going to deny your permit because you do not meet the requirements of our code, we will limit it 30%. If anyone says, I have a parking lot and I want to make my parking lot bigger, I don't know what they might want to do. They have to come through planning and engineering. And we're going to review their requests, and that's for anyone, because I don't know, someone could come in and say, I have all this landscaping, I would love to pave over it and just create one big beautiful parking lot. And then they won't meet the code for landscaping. So we're going to review any of those types of requests that wants from municipal code, both for residential, commercial, and industrial.
I also have a question. I think with the parking, and I don't think I saw the diagram, but I'm just thinking to your point as well, ADA compliance, and then also, I just, it might already be, but just I want to make sure that we're following that we have enough space to have large vans for, education or senior nutrition, or even Amazon, right, like delivery trucks or whatever's needed. Is there?
So they actually have an area in the front as part of the initial review of the project. The transit authority asked for an area for buses to pull out, something like that. So it can be used for anything actually. And then within the site for ADA compliance, we do an initial check for the planning review. And then because by the time someone builds, the building code has probably changed or the laws have changed. So at building, so when they come in for the building and grading permits, we're again checking for ADA compliance, and it's not planning at that point, it's the experts that are checking to make sure. Other questions?
I do, so the housing affordable, the housing accountability act, I spoke to Eva. That's SB9, correct?
No.
No,
SB9 is the 2-unit development. The Housing Accountability Act is its own.
what's specific to, is this one specific to? I guess it can be, CEQA?
No, so the Housing Accountability Act is specific to the development of residential projects in the state of California, and it's for any residential development. And so the Housing Accountability Act seeks to prohibit cities from denying residential projects that comply with the municipal code or general plan, because there have been cities that have denied it. As part of that, where cities used to be able to negotiate design with a developer or other design requirements that are not codified, and that is no longer, we're not allowed to do that. We can only review a design against objective standards which the city does not have yet.
And it has to do with mitigating impacts.
It has to do with the state wants you to approve housing within the state of California, and they seek to prohibit you or the city council from denying a project that complies with the municipal code or general.
Okay, well, I'm reading here, says that many people adverse impact on public compensation, the project cannot consist of objective standards.
So objective standards are those standards within the municipal code. So for example, meets the requirements for parking, exceeds the requirements for parking. The setbacks were waived under the density bonus, so you can pull them up for the density bonus. You could deny a project that came in, and let's say is a single family residential project, and they are proposing, or land designated for single family residential, and someone comes in and says, I don't care that it's single family residential in your general plan, I want to build 500 apartments. You can deny it for that, it doesn't meet the general plan. That's an objective standard. The general plan will say, in this designation, you can only do X, and this is the density. And so if someone came in and did not meet that, you can deny a project for that. You could also deny a project if the fire marshal determines that the project doesn't meet fire code. So maybe it's a very large project and there's only one way in and one way out, and the fire marshal says, I cannot adequately serve this project in a high fire hazard area because I need 2 exits per fire code. You could deny it for that. So those are the reasons you can deny a project. It can't be because I don't like the look of it. It can't be because, even though the code says, whatever the code makes them say, I just disagree with the code and so I'm going to deny the project. Those are not reasons to deny a residential project.
Well, and here's where I'm getting with that question, I appreciate those answers. What is the affordability rate that is considered with this project? Like what, it's considered, affordable, right?
It is a 100% affordable project.
So there's a measurement of what is considered affordable. What would it be?
So, they're within the low income category, and so their rents, they also have and Eden can speak better to it, because they also have, while they maintain the low income category, they're also doing, I believe, farm worker housing, they got, some funding for that. But with the density bonus, when you select an income category, be it very low or low, let's say in this case, because it's an apartment, you have to follow the income category every year when renting out the units, and then the rent is restricted. The state has a formula that we can follow. It includes the rent plus utilities within that maximum amount, and that is what people look at. So every year it gets
So what is it now though?
So it's that 140, 200 is based on a family of 4, that's the median income, and then the way that it's calculated is it's adjusted both for the level of affordability, it's a percentage of that median, and then the household size itself. So it's not that every household is making less than or equal to 140, 200. It's that, you know, if it's a household of 8, they can make a little bit more. If it's a household of 1, they can make a significant amount less. And then depending on if the unit is very low income restricted or low income restricted or moderate income restricted, it's a percentage based on that need.
Based off of the applicant?
Is the applicant here to do a presentation?
they're here, they have a presentation, and Eden can speak more to their, how they vet people, how they do the rents.
Yes, and the city's involved in that as well, so they'll have a housing agreement that's adopted by the city council, and then they work with our housing programs department to vet applicants, to do the lotteries, to make sure they're qualifying on income, to make sure Eden's renting at the right prices. All of that's done through that housing agreement, through the housing program.
That's under the density bonus, that's already approved and in effect, so all the requirements for restricting, for entering into a housing agreement for a period of 55 years, that's all within a resolution that was previously adopted, so we're not looking at that tonight, we're just looking at the design.
Yes, yeah.
So, and like other questions, what is the average, rent?
It's not been, I couldn't be able to tell you that, as I mentioned, it's based on it's like 30% of 50% of 60% of the median based on the household size. It's all adjusted based on the size of the unit and based on its specific restriction. So the average rent will vary from unit to unit, and the payment that the applicants will make, and who gets qualified, will vary from
I appreciate that. I mean, I just, back to Julio's point, which I think is valid, and this is just the reality, right? I mean, as a planning commission, it starts up to understand the implications of planning. And the fact that it reduced the actual size of the parking lot, or the size of the stall, I should say, right? The same amount of stalls, but it's smaller. Then these are, by default, it's not even just about smaller vehicles, it's I mean, it's just a growing trend. You're seeing it right now because of what's the economy and inflation. You know, you're ultimately seeing 3 to 4 families living together. You know, and that means that you're going to have more vehicles. That means you're going to have a lot more impacts. I mean, I'm curious, like, if this 52, especially considering the public hearing, 52, and advise, you know, did we notify the neighbors of this project and make sure that they understood that the potential impacts?
So, sorry,
I mean, I just wanna make it clear, this project's approved, like, the project is approved, so all that you're considering tonight is the change to the parking and the change to the design that. So those are the only two things that you're considering approving.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, regardless, I mean, I have a vote, right? And it's either a yes or a no, and I have the right to say no. And my point is, whether I decide to approve it or not is all dependent upon the impacts, because I'm held accountable for my vote. And if that vote means the impacts are gonna be negative to the property surrounding that, you know, then I by default, I'm gonna be held accountable by the public for my decision. Regardless, it's already approved before it was.
So, yes, a notice went out to all the neighbors within 300 feet. So everyone was notified, or all the property owners were notified on it. But
When was that?
it goes out 10 days before as required by state law. It's also published in the newspaper. It's also on our agenda, and then our agenda gets published online. But again, I caution you, because if a project meets the requirements of the municipal code, the state has very specific what we need to do. And this project exceeds the required number of parking spaces, and it's less than the maximum number of compact spaces. We want to keep one, so it's well within our code. So any residential project complies with our code, this one exceeds our.
Do we want to know the applicant and maybe ask if there's more questions?
The perimeter of the property, they have all four sides, right? You do not, it's a child. But they have the other side, right? You
They
don't-
have one sound wall and then another side.
And are those parking spots, I know there's street parking,
We
but
do not count street parking towards their parking requirement.
are they
So
with park carpet or they're?
anyone can park, anyone can park on the street, but when you are building any residential project, so multifamily, for example, you have to provide the number of stalls required by our code within your project site. So it's on their surface parking, you're not counting anything else.
Can I ask one clarifying question to the attorney? Are we allowed to piecemeal this? So if there's, we agree with, say, everything else, that the parking does become a point of like concern and contention, that we say this is just something that we're not gonna accept, is that a possibility, or is this kind of like a all or nothing?
You can do that, but what I will tell you is that the parking is approved. So there are 192 stalls approved. So all that you're doing tonight is you're saying, yes, they can still have 192, but they can have a certain number that are smaller. So if you don't approve it, then they're just still going to have 192 parking spaces, just bigger differences with less landscaping.
Okay.
I could also point out that they still have one density bonus incentive, and they can request an incentive for the compact spaces.
So in other words, they could just say, they use density bonus, and then we lose even more parking, that's what you're essentially saying.
They could take 40 spaces away from this project and it would still meet the
Yeah.
city's requirements for parking.
So they're being benevolent or generous. So
Yes, but if you deny the parking, they could come forward with a density bonus, and then it's not.
Have even less than.
Yeah.
And the state of California wants that decision.
No, so if they can afford, if you deny the number of compact spaces, and they came forward with a plan tomorrow and said, we would like our last incentive, it will get approved, and then at that point, they could change it to anything they want.
I can see the benefit of shrinking the size of the lot, right? It's cheaper, right? Affordable housing by default, we don't even know exactly what that even means, affordable, just about the term. What is the average cost, you know? So it's, I don't even know what that even means.
But we can't focus on affordable. The affordability of the project has already been approved. We've approved it under the specifications of their density bonus. Here tonight, we're just looking at design and the reconfiguration of the parking lot.
Well, what I'm hearing is you want me to put those again. You want me to just,
But the municipal
impacts
code
have
says
been
there's
I
no.
understand, that. Yeah, it's just, you basically you're saying rubber stamp with already been approved. Technically speaking, it's just procedural, which are moved up, right? What they're considering as ministerial.
In a way,
But it's lies in the conflict of the reality of the vote.
you do have a vote. I'm just giving you the reality. The reality is if you deny the parking, they'll likely come back with their last density bonus and ask staff to just approve it as is. and it could change further. The other unfortunate likelihood would be that they would contact HCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, and they would issue a letter to us and tell us to approve it. And potentially fine us.
Who's us?
The city.
Yeah, I'd love for them to maybe come and talk to us about this conversation. I think the board, the public should know that we have.
To be clear, where this change has been approved. It's just, there's gonna be more green space available because they're gonna reduce some normal size parking spots to with the same number overall.
Which will reduce the amount of paving in the area, which will reduce the heat effect and then more landscaping and more greenery, which is always a benefit.
Do we ask the applicant questions or?
That's what I want us to, yeah, but I wanted to see if we can have the applicant present and then we can continue. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, do we do the public hearing or?
Yes, please. If you could open the public hearing.
Okay, I will now open the public hearing at 6:45 PM. And staff, do we have a presentation from the applicant on this item?
Thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Dixie Baus. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development for Eaton Housing, representing the ownership entity. Online, I have the project developer, manager, Wei Song, in case you have specific questions that I can't make up answers to, because she's in the day-to-day. And also with us this evening is the architect team, who will be the best party to answer technical questions. We first came to you in 2023 with this property, and this property is part of a much larger development. We were generously given this land by SES Homes to develop and build 100 affordable homes, which were mandated as part of that approval several decades ago. And since that time, we have worked on the design of the project. We've gotten the project approved in terms of the design. You charged us, along with City Council, to go out and fund it. And we said, we will do that. We have a development agreement signed with the city that specifies the requirements by which we have to produce the housing and at what levels we have. And so really this is a good opportunity to give you an overview of an update of what's been happening. These homes will be for those earning 30 to 60% of the area median income. We'll also provide a community service room, a recreational area, if you will, plenty of common space, plenty of parking, as we discussed, much more than what's required by code. And the reason we are back in front of you is because we are really trying to build these homes, and we are very close. We are one letter away from an award with the state agency that closes most of the gap. And we're here in front of you doing the right thing, not building a fence where we shouldn't build a fence, following the rules, asking you to help us get over that finish line. And the changes that we are requesting are vital for the feasibility of the project to continue. We are ready to issue our tax credit application should this approval go forward. And I would love to give the floor to our architects who will further explain some of the changes. I'd like to invite Alex.
Hi, Commissioners. Good to see you again. My name is Alex Stewart. I represent Collective Operations Architecture. We've been working on this project with Nixie and Eden for the past 2+ years. We were here when it was entitled in 2023. And here it represents many changes. We can also address some of the comments that you might have regarding parking, regarding open space, things like that. So
So this is the previous proposal. We've made substantial changes to the look of the building, but that's mostly driven out of the need for. We were a little bit over in terms of pricing. As we've mentioned, costs have gone up in the past few years, especially in construction. So we had to go back and revise to make sure that we can make this project feasible, to make sure it can be built. That being said, here you see the new design updates, which we think are well improved in addition to being more feasible. As Eric has mentioned, it involves a new modification of the slope, the roof, increase articulation of buildings, which we think is a really good benefit, especially given now that the target architects have been developed over around there. Relocation of some of the balconies, but we still maintain all the balconies. So everybody has access to it. Some changes to the building materials and some changes to the building. So here's a view from Caesar. Yes, this would be part of the main view. As you can see, the project now takes on more articulated massing. Each of these buildings, there's 5 main residential buildings, is formulated in a way that looks like it's several smaller buildings, which I think is much more in line with the existing scale of the view from just south. This parking has parking is in the same place, which just have a little bit smaller. I'll show you after that. So originally we always had 192 spaces. We had more large spaces because people are compact spaces. Now a regular parking space that needs to be next to 6.5 feet by. It's not that much smaller. It's still fit in the size SUV. Should have 2 dimensions. But if you look to the right of this image where that shed is, that whole area actually used to be parking. What we've been able to do by developing these regular spaces is to open that up to for children to play, or friends to gather, or anybody to open space that doesn't. I think these changes actually have a difference in the design style, much more than the cost of it. But I think the value of having in serious with project, we have these quarters. This has not changed since the previous iteration. What you see is a slightly different detail. And just one aspect of the project that is important is that these spaces become present for all the residents, and maybe some community members. Slide. Just checkable. The designs with all the elements, the massing is more.
Do we have public comments? Do we have a public comment?
If you have any questions as the commission for the applicant's team, this will be time and then.
Okay.
Do we have?
Yeah. Can you go back to the slide we had the most slides that no.
Sorry, could you return to the slide?
Are those still true, or by the end of the description, part of it is the part of where it's at as of right now, or
I think 2 days ago, HUD released the 2026 fair market rents. I don't know what the impact is going to be on this area, but I don't believe it's going to have much of an impact is what we're expecting. We're expecting rents that will remain flat, which is very good because they're already extremely high.
I just wanted to make the comment first is, thank you for the presentation and taking the time. I think the the construction revisions, it sounds like there were cost, savings. And in my opinion, we actually got a better looking building that fits in the neighborhood. So I want to thank you guys for that. I just really want to emphasize, I apologize, my prejudice towards the project is not anything personal. I mean, back to the pizza analogy. Yes, a medium pizza, right? You slice it more ways to feed more people, right? We go back to, but we're still shrinking the size. My grievance is, it's how the application process works to amending, you know, hey, maybe we need to increase the amount of parking spots and we can make some of these compact, but it limits the kind of the ability of the property owner or person to then expand it. Now, with that being said, it sounds like there's a lot of tools, density bonuses you guys could utilize in the future. So my question is, it sounds like the need to reduce the amount of parking is because it's a cost. That we're going to save some money because the construction costs are too high. I guess I want to know what is the reason for all of a sudden this change. I feel like, you know,
See, I'm trying to be direct and respectful. We're not changing the number of parking spaces. We're not going down the whole We're meeting the code of the required percentage of compact spaces. And now I can candidly say to you, why did we come back to you? Because the change, quite frankly, saves us $4.5 million, which means we are now a feasible project. And we can apply for the tax credits. That's just me being very candid in front of you. We have $4.5 million to go to build 100 affordable homes in this community. And the combination of all the changes that we put in front of you and the enhancements that I hope we brought to the look of the building, which I know I'm happy with the changes, but that's the bottom line. It's things that we can't control. Insurance costs, uncontrollable. Tariff risk, uncontrollable. We have done everything we possibly could and gone and gotten every single dollar from every source we've been able to get, including this planning commission, which made some concessions in 2023 for us as well. So that's really what drove us to come in here.
If tonight I were to give you guys, you know, yay, I'm on board, don't like it, but I do emphasize with that. Is there the possibility that you guys are still going to go ahead and apply for that density bonus?
No, we wouldn't.
I don't know if that's an appropriate question. I just want clarification of that.
I would just clarify they already have a density bonus. They've been given concessions for this project for the density bonus. What they have is additional concessions that they could ask for if they so desired. This approval would be the design they want. I won't allow me to speak for you on that matter. But they could very well utilize the density bonus law and the additional concessions that they qualify for based on the affordability they're providing to ask for these.
Right.
It is our intent, if this is approved tonight, to file that application with the state for our tax credits in 2 weeks when it's due. That is our intent, which means we would not reopen the planning commission action and ask for any modifications. We would then be on the clock, so to speak, and risk losing not only all of the funding we've raised, but also the tax credits as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
The previous market distribution was 22%. So we not only eliminate the parking there, but we also eliminate that.
I do have a
I just have, I don't know, because you guys are developing this project, correct? So it's not necessarily, you guys aren't in charge of how the property to rent it out.
Housing is full service. We do property management as well, so we own other communities in the city, and we will own and operate this as well.
Well, and I guess, well, then my next question is, because I know that with other projects that are considered affordable, they actually have an application process, they open it up, not just to San Diego County, but to the region, and really to the benefit of our community. Reside in our community, and the next reality is the impacts are obviously increasing. We have population that is housed from basically you're seeing the impacts of what's going to our community. And our own residents have been.
I don't have a comment to that.
So you don't just limit it to San Diego County, the application.
Or
No.
those are prioritized to somebody.
Yeah, fair housing prohibits not allowing anyone who's qualified to apply for housing.
So like, not allowing.
The federal fair housing law states that you can allow, you have to allow access to an applicant regardless of where they live to any housing. But I know this community has unmet need and is overhoused. And we are really, really active in the community, and we can't wait to go to our people who we know in the community and the farmers markets and the other gathering spaces we do go to and attend to announce the waiting list is open.
So I'm a social worker and I work in Santa Clara County and I know about your program and we've had clients who have benefited, right? So normally, I'm more like, ooh, developers, but, but I think in this case, we're talking about helping our community who have needs. We all know it's essential. And, I think, I'm definitely, I said publicly, I'm about slow growth, smart growth as well. But I think, the way you are intentional about having green space, about children's space, you've been thoughtful about the parking, the community set up. I'm really excited about that you mentioned. How big is that?
Let me make it up.
Yeah.
The community room will give out 1,000 square feet, but also be a space that should be roughly 1,000 square feet. It's about 1,000.
And available to the community or to that?
What?
I mean, those are program questions. I know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you thought of it. I don't know.
We think about how we can offer space for our community members who look for gathering spaces. So we do think about that very intentionally.
Thank you. And then I think the other consideration, I think as a farm worker, potential housing, is that for sure? And if so, with the green space, and I saw the pictures, there were a lot of palm trees, but considering culturally and considering, the national deficit and where things are going, green space is going to be important for all of us. And because these are apartments, they don't have a backyard. Are there areas that you're considering? And that's a community garden, but is it all palm trees or can they plant whatever they want? Fruits and vegetables and.
I don't know, Vice Chair, if the site programming to that level of detail has been completed because we aren't in construction drawings yet. Yeah, but thank you for your consideration, Alex.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, I'm not anti, actually, I'm very supportive of affordable housing. I know it's not necessarily, a very lucrative business, yeah, there's obviously the cost for materials, labor, and only going up inflation. I'm just literally continuing to invest, right? And I know, technically, the median income, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's including, there's basically locals that are living here and working here, and then there's obviously locals that are living and working out of county. Those two numbers, my understanding is vastly different. There's a big disparity between the locals that are working. And our average income is very low, right? I think the highest is 100 are one of the workers, whereas, you know, sector folks that work for in trade and stuff in Santa Clara County are definitely above $100,000. So it's just, I see an opportunity to gentrification by default, right? It's squeezing out of lower income folks. They have to move out of our community and then of a vastly different culture in San Diego County. And so that's why I asked this question. I want to be honest. I really do. I'm just.
There are no doubt complicated issues, and we're proud to be an owner of several communities in the city of Hollister, and we will continue to be that owner that you have come to love.
Being a property manager for agents that were projects, how do you handle taking into non parking or the neighboring single family homes? Does those incidents come up?
Not to my knowledge, but no different than I would handle my neighbor. You know, go over and have a conversation. If there's an issue, you know, we don't tend to have problems in terms of overparked, underparked, in particularly even in our urban areas. But this isn't an urban area by any means. It flips in and out of USDA rural designation. By the way, it's gone from one year it's rural designation, 1 year it's not. So the community is changing. It is changing. And yes,
All those things.
right.
And they're not assigned to
They will be assigned.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your being so candid and direct. I think I appreciate that. And if you save money to help people.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to present.
Thank you. And staff, do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, we have two speakers online. We can start with Tyrone Party.
I don't think I actually know how to unmute people. Sorry, still learning.
Me too.
So everyone, you can go ahead and unmute and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Tyrone Party, and I live at 1901 Lantana Drive, less than 150 feet from the proposed ease and housing project. I've been a resident at this location since November 2022. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. First, I just want to raise the concern about transparency. When my family and many of my neighbors purchased our homes, some as recently as 6 months ago, we were never informed that a concentrated low-income affordable housing project would be placed across the street. Even the city's recent notice for this meeting contained the wrong date, which begins to deepen a concern that American citizens most directly impacted are being left out of the process. Second, our infrastructure presently in this area is already strained. I walk my granddaughter to school in the morning and see traffic backed up with cars, trucks, and buses. The present roads are not built to handle the additional load of 100 more family units, let alone vehicles and additional individuals. Under CEQA, projects must undergo current studies, and if significant impacts are found, such as traffic, air quality, noise, school capacity, or effects on public services, agencies are required to identify ways to avoid or mitigate those impacts before approval. In our case, we have traffic congestion, school already overcrowded at the edge, and lack of infrastructure upgrades are exactly those kinds of issues that must be evaluated. We who reside in Hollister in the United States of America can tell you today the present infrastructure is presently strained beyond capacity. Third, our schools and public spaces are overcrowded. The nearest school, Sarah Vista School, is stretched beyond capacity for classrooms, recreation, and in the evenings and afternoons, multiple sports competing for limited space every afternoon and evening, adding 100 more units, and who knows how many individuals will put an impossible burden on education, transportation, recreation, and safety for all. It's not easy to say, go talk to your neighbor. And let me be clear, I'm not against affordable housing. I'm for responsible growth. And responsible growth means requiring safeguards for American families and their generations to come. An environmental impact report current needs to consider what is the impact of new housing developments that have occurred in this area, and in addition, the impact of putting 100-unit development in a small space. So before this project proceeds, I respectfully request the Planning Commission required of a minimum, a current traffic study of the proposed area, and a funded plan for road improvements, proof of coordination with the school district to handle overcrowding, updated impact reports that reflect today's realities, not outdated reports, reconsideration of proposed project based on current community and residential needs. I urge you, do not approve this project in its current form. Rather, a new project based on responsible growth and community needs.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin Hardy. Do we have another public comment?
Yes, we have also online Alicia Ortiz. Oh, not there anymore. We have in person, Mr. Joseph Ostigo. Hope I didn't say.
Right, as you can see, I have an evening shirt on. Born and raised here. School here, deal with the community. Donated a lot of time to all the assembly, boards of directors and nonprofits and stuff. Where I grew up, I'm on Line Street, and I grew up there when that was, it was Apricot Orchard and Walnut Orchard. Some tomato farming, and it's put next to us, and housing went up, and development all around us, and now instead of being county, country, it's ice trail. And I get along with my neighbors, and got that preference and I can't speak specifically for the guidelines and so forth, about parking, only, but it's nothing to that. But I just want to say, I've been on the Eden board of directors, based in Hayward, with a lot of time, a lot of travel to promote affordable housing in our community. I call it the South 40, San Benito, Monterey, and Santa Cruz. And the affordable housing is, it's not for people that have absolutely no money, people that make a lower income, better make a home, a clean place to live. And I was with South County Housing for over 10 years. Did a lot of projects in the area. We used to make sure that it was run correctly. Let me tell you, these places
I walked through these places, I go, man, I wish I could live there. But I mean, just a little bit more. And then I just want to say, I believe extra parking is a good idea. Landscaping is always a plus, and that's what we're there for, but beyond that, they are safe, clean, healthy communities, the services that Eden provides and staffing and so forth, they make it a community. And each one of those units, meet people from there, so, and it's not, it doesn't just become a place to stay, it becomes a home. Like, scholarships, programs for the kids' computers, stuff for seniors, and we try to make it the safest place and the best looking places to keep them up. They are positive for our community. As far as the parking on the street, is there bike parking over there, bicycle? Yeah, I went to one and they have, you can secure place to keep your parking and your bike. Thank you for your time. I'm supportive of it.
Thank you.
Do we have another?
We do not have any more public speakers.
Thank you. We will go ahead and close the public hearing, 7:15. Is there further discussion from the commission on this item?
I would just like to say, one thing, two things to the applicant. First off, I think some of the comments, or one of the comments, this is kind of indicative of, I think, the sentiment of growth overall. It's very evident that we haven't the infrastructure, and with that being said, just this project so far, I mean, other than the parking, I think, frankly, you guys have a great degree of latitude in terms of tools and things you guys have at your disposal. I think you guys did, in good faith, really try to make this project a good project. I do see that. We absolutely do need affordable housing. I'm not going to go into nuances of who can buy, who will buy, but the reality is we do need affordable housing. And I do hope that the residents of the community will benefit and can get into these houses. And thank you for your time tonight.
I just had one final concern. The gentleman that spoke right now, he mentioned that he didn't know his property. So I don't know what those people given the date. And I know it's supposed to be within a certain time frame.
I can address that, Commissioner Hernandez. Yes, so we sent the notice to the newspaper, which was published on Friday the 15th. That was timely. However, also on the 15th, we sent the 300-foot notice to the property owners. It did have an incorrect date. It said June 28th. However, that's an early notice, and we noticed it on Monday morning and resent another 300-foot notice to all the same property owners on Monday, the 18th of August, timely within the 10 days. So it was properly noticed, but the speaker was correct. There was a incorrect notice, and then we sent a correction notice. No, it's a 10-day notice requirement, so we do things on Friday before, so the original notice in our normal time frame is on the 15th, which is more than 10 days, but then we noticed on Monday morning that there was an error, and so for all three projects that are on tonight's agenda, we resent a corrected notice that came on the 18th. So the hearing was properly noticed, so the commission is not concerned with holding this hearing.
Other questions? Curious, and I had thought about it, and then I forgot in the caller, the speaker, what did the school district, which would be the Hollister School District, say about the decline, a letter of support or not support, or did they say anything?
So the original 100 units was just approved, so they were notified then. This project has been a project since 1980.
Yeah, I saw that.
So it has been a long
But
project.
either way,
But yes, they're aware, and in the state of California, we require the payment of school impact fees, which this project is required today. And that is to reduce impacts to schools, and the state has identified that as one of the mitigation firms.
Just curious because, I mean, there's two of us here who have been on school boards and that, you know, it is a consideration of traffic and I was just curious if that's it. Okay. Any other questions? Are we ready for motion?
Should the single study here as a date of when the latest information has been filled in second, March, but I know for people standards, it's still approved.
So, yeah, so we have the first environmental impact report, which properly studied the west of Fairview specific plan. There were some minor modifications, and then we have supplemental. Those impacts that are studied in that EIR continue to apply to this project because the EIR, as well as the specific plan, assume the development of the project over time. And so it's still valid. Because that project came in when it came in, it is an identified project. So when any other project comes in the area, the surrounding area in the city, there's the baseline information that they have to follow. So that information keeps getting repeated in all the other subsequent CEQA documents so that you build on those impacts. So nothing's in a vacuum. I can't build a project next door to it and ignore that a project was approved and there's the traffic counts for this identified project. I have to take those numbers and then I add them to my project. So what you do is your project only, your project was baseline, it's a whole kind of calculation that goes into it, but since this project became a project, since there was an EIR, all those impacts identified now keep blossoming into every other project.
I would just add that, because Erica just briefly touched on it, but we do have two commissioners. These 100 multifamily units have been planned and were a part of the larger West of Fairview project. So you'll know that some of the phases are coming online, all the single family homes. So there's the EIR that studied not only these 100 multifamily apartments, but it also studied 579 single family homes that are still in construction today. We're in the phase 2 and phase 3 of that project that's building around. So this site in this location in the larger new single family homes that are going in, this site has always been 100 multifamily units. And in 2021, the city council amended the development agreement for the West of Fairview, 679 total units, to require this to be 100 affordable apartment units. So since 2021, this has been planned to be 100 affordable. So they're kind of obligated by the council to have 100 affordable apartments here. And they have been planned since 1992 to have 100 apartments as part of this general.
Because of that positive, the larger project.
Yes, West of Fairview,
And how many units is that?
679.
Because it's supposed to be a percent, right, of that is supposed to be affordable.
No,
Because this
100 apartments are affordable, and there are 33 moderate restricted single-family detached homes that are being built. They're most all built. So you have a total of 133 affordable homes of 679 total.
That was part of the original.
Part of the original project.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to adopt 7.1 housing SA SMA 2016.
yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Looking forward to seeing our community then.
No, just for the record, that resolution number is going to be 2025-19.
Next, we have 7.2 zoning ordinance amendment. May we have the staff report?
To give you a little bit of background on why we are here today, this cleanup is part of staff's overall goal to overhaul the existing zoning ordinance. The goal of the overhaul of the zoning ordinance is to eventually bring our zoning ordinance into the plans of state law to make it easier to read for both staff and the public, more friendly, and to provide additional regulations or information that can help both guide staff and the public. The proposed phases of the overhaul are phase one, which were edits to the zoning ordinance for consistency with state law, and those were adopted. But now we're considering phase one to be an ongoing because the state keeps changing laws, and so we have to keep amending our zoning ordinance. Phase two, which is this phase, is edits to the use tables and definitions, and then again, because some state laws have changed, we need to include some amendments to zoning ordinance. And then phase three, which we should hopefully start at your next planning commission meeting, will be an overhaul of permitting requirements. And then phase four would be the remainder of the zoning ordinance, so that will be a big chunk of the zoning ordinance. These draft amendments that are before you were reviewed by the planning commission on June 26th, and no changes were requested, but I'm going to go over all the changes in a little bit of more detail than I would normally do because we do have two commissioners. With regards to chapter 17.32, which is our accessory dwelling units chapter, state law significantly changed starting January 1st, 2025. And for the study session, staff had drafted drafted some amendments to the current chapter. We did receive a letter I believe the day of or the day before regarding the draft amendments. We're working with the city attorney on going through that letter and the state law again. So we removed accessory dwelling units from this cleanup, but then we will bring it back to you at some point at either the next meeting or subsequent meeting to get accessory dwelling units. With regards to chapter 17.26, which is our 2-unit developments and lot splits, we had to make a minor change, which is just to modify the references to the government code section because of the 2025 ADU law change. They changed the section of the government code for the ADU laws house, so we need to change that. With regards to density bonus, the state of California has made a significant number of changes, and those are reflected in the draft ordinance before you. So there are amendments to the required concessions and amendments. Required concessions and incentives we must allow. There are amendments to how density is calculated in mixed-use development. You're required to allow density bonuses for shared housing developments. There are modifications to the definition of student housing developments, and there are now modifications to developments that qualify as senior housing developments. And all of those new changes are codified into the proposed amendments. Religious assembly. Churches and places of worship are regulated by the Religious Land Use Protection Act. And in our zoning ordinance, churches and places of worship, religious assemblies, must be allowed with the same permitting requirements as similar uses for gathering towns. Apply with that requirement for
Sorry.
comply with the requirements from the MUBA, we had to amend the use tables so that the permitting requirements are. Use table modifications is our largest amendment that we're proposing at this time. Many changes have been made. Most importantly, what we have done is we have reformatted the tables and we have added definitions to match the uses. And then some of the uses have been compressed. We're under one use. Before we had 10, we used one category to compress into as far as residential uses go, we did add transitional housing and community care facilities, which are required by state law. Those are now in there. Anything 6 and under is permitted by right, which follows along with state law. Anything 7 or more requires a commission. We have added permit requirements for supporting supportive housing as well. And we modified the permit requirements for family daycares, which the state allows family daycares as a permitted use for anything 14 and up. Again, use cases were revised, not so much in the residential chapter, but there were a few where we did modify them. And then at the end of this chapter, and it's the same for most of the chapters, so I won't repeat myself. At the end of each use table in the current zoning ordinance, there was a large number of notes. And so someone had to look at the use table and go down to the note. And then sometimes there was more than one note, it got a little confusing. So where we could, we added those notes into the definition. So when they look at their use, let's say their use is, car wash, they could go right to the car wash in the definitions section. And it will explain what a car wash is and any restrictions. For home office, where the section 1706.020 currently just lists what is a conditionally permitted use. And so we have modified that so it's a table to match all the other sections because that is much easier to read. For commercial and mixed uses, this saw maybe some of the larger changes, and it mostly relates to the number of uses we had, which again could be found in one. So we say we have 20 retail uses, which could just be called retail to make it a little bit easier and not be so long, so we could easily find their use. And then again, everybody has their own definition. We had changed our religious assembly to be allowed to administer permit review, which is consistent with law. We had tasting rooms as a permitted use. We had bail bonds as a use. We had emergency shelters, again required by state law. And then at the beginning of prior to the table in the existing code, there is a very long statement on what the permitting requirements are, and it's a repeat of another chapter. And then you have a note and then a chapter. What happens is one thing gets amended and the other doesn't, and you should really look in the permitting chapter. So we eliminated that so there's no, let's say, conflicts in the future, and just to make it a little bit of again, industrial was slightly amended, same with others, but again, emergency shelters were added. Our biggest change in this chapter is related to commercial recreation. There was a number of different definitions for it before. It was quite confusing. There was health and fitness, there was recreation. They all meant the same thing. So we changed it to commercial recreation, and then there's major, minor, and active, so that it's easy to figure out what you fall between rather than the varying definitions of use. For airport zone, again, within airport zone, there was a number of uses that were actually the same thing. So we compressed those and then made sure there was a definition. For most of the airport uses, there actually was no definition. So we made sure that every use now has a definition. So if someone wants to look at it and they do not want to call staff, they can look at their zoning district, they can see what the use lists are, and then they can look easily at the definitions and see if they fall within it. And if they, of course, have any other questions, call us, but now it makes it easier for anyone to decipher which each of those uses means. Again, open space, park, and public facilities, minorly amended, again, mostly to provide a definition. The definitions section of the code is in 1702 right now. Staff is proposing to repeal that existing section and create a new chapter. So they're all on their own. They can be easily find just by looking at the table of contents for the zoning ordinance. So it would be a new chapter. This section was significantly changed in the sense that we had a number of uses, or we have a number of uses in the existing zoning ordinance that do not have a definition. So we added a definition in, and we went over those new definitions at the study session. And then the formatting in the current municipal code is inconsistent from page to page. So we made sure there's one consistent formatting for all the definitions. So it gives it a cleaner look and it's much more easier to read. So again, from the study session, all those changes that we reviewed before, those are in there. We just reformatted it to make it look easier to read it and moved it to a different chapter. The only changes we made since the study session were, in some cases, when reformatting it, you see that they needed a the or an of, and so we added them in there for grammatical correctness. But what you see in the new chapter is would be our new definitions chapter, and much easier for people to read it. One minor change we're proposing is an amendment to the project sign notification. Right now, there is all the requirements for signs, and because they're in there, they are very hard for staff to change. It's easier, and most cities do it as are required to do it, and the staff has a handout on how you have to comply with those requirements. The existing requirements don't require the project to actually put a sign notification up until they're complete. Most projects aren't complete until right before hearing, so it doesn't allow for adequate, it doesn't allow for the purpose of the sign. So we're proposing to change it so that it just requires that project notification, and then staff will have the requirements. So anything such as a conditional use permit and a map, those projects are going to be required to have a sign notification, and they'll have to do it when staff asks them. And that'll be a requirement in order to deem them complete, rather than we don't have to. In our mixed-use zoning districts, the city currently does not require, it does not include a requirement for housing to be constructed as part of a project in the mixed-use zoning district. So we could get a commercial project, or we could get a residential project, but we don't have anything that requires them to both be, to in fact be mixed use in the mixed use zoning district. We have concerns because our regional housing needs allocation, we have identified those mixed use properties as providing the housing numbers that we need. These areas are also more dense, so you see more multifamily, but what we're seeing is people come in with just a commercial project. They don't do a residential. So we're proposing an amendment to the zoning ordinance to actually require mixed use in a mixed use development. So that would be that concludes my very long list of zoning ordinance amendments. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we do have options before you tonight. You could adopt the resolution, recommend city council approval of the amendments as included in the draft ordinance included with the resolution. You could make some amendments to that draft ordinance. You could deny if you chose to do so, or you could continue the hearing if you need some additional information.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I just have one quick question about the mixed use. So you're saying, right, as of right now, there's mixed use, but it's a great degree of latitude for applicants to say, I'm just gonna build commercial space, correct? Okay. So does that mean they also have a great degree of latitude to make the recommended changes that then someone could just say, we're just gonna go ahead and build apartment complexes within it, because that would fit within that mixed use?
So what we're seeing, unfortunately, is we've identified that we're going to build X amount of dwelling units in our mixed use zoning district. And then what we see is we've identified, let's say parcel A and parcel B is for mixed use. And then parcel A comes in and they want to be commercial, so they take away those units that we had anticipated. And so that pulls us further away from meeting our arena numbers. And then parcel B might come in, but they're, even at the density that they're building at, we're still minus numbers.
Right.
That makes sense.
I guess my only concern is then there's also the caveat of that, which should be, you know, we all didn't just applicants building houses. It's like, well, the whole point of mixed use is to have mixed use. Is there a way to kind of enforce that there has to be mixed use, not?
Yes, so the way we worded it is it has to be mixed use because it is a mixed use
Okay.
district, but for maybe an omission or nobody anticipated that someone would build mixed use in a mixed use. There's no requirement now. And so we find people not building one or the other and not both. That's really what we want to see.
Absolutely.
And I would just add a clarifying point as well that the city is in the middle of the general plan update, and part of that general plan is looking at some more objective requirements for commercial at, specifically at some of our key intersection points in the mixed use and making sure that there's some objective standards for commercial and how we're gonna incorporate that into housing projects. And then I just will add, on the counterpoint that there are some ability under like density bonus law, affordable housing, for those types of things, where a housing project might qualify to request to remove a commercial requirement. So it's not 100% guaranteed, but the goal is to try to get towards mixed use and also to avoid that no net loss law where if we keep losing housing sites, we will have to start designating other sites, likely things that are currently commercially designated for housing to make up for lost housing sites that we claimed in our housing.
Right, okay. No, thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions?
The majority of these studies are mainly formatting. And so the mixed development is a main one that does have it. You change the parameters of it.
The majority of what we're trying to do here is the zoning ordinance currently does not work for staff or the public. It's very hard to read. It is very hard to understand. If I have a use listed in a table and I don't know what that use is supposed to be and there's no definition, it's very difficult for all involved, right? So we're ultimately trying to do, the ultimate goal of this overhaul is to make the zoning ordinance more user-friendly. So that's the bulk of what you're looking at tonight. We changed a few things, we added some definitions. And then on top of that, we have changes that we have to make that are required by state law, so those are in there. And then the other two really are the project site notification and then the mixed use. Those are the main, not within those parameters.
Other questions?
So does this mean also that all these definitions are, like they're easier to interpret for the person, the applicant, you know, so there's less ambiguity?
That was the whole, like, purpose is the ambiguity is too hard again, and then again, right now, if there's no definition in it, there's abuse, like, that's very ambiguous, right? So we're trying to clean that up so that I could make the same interpretation that you would make on a use and that someone in the public can make, because the zoning ordinance is used by all of us, but it's really useful for the public as well. And so we need to make sure that the zoning ordinance works for all parties involved and doesn't require the city attorney to make an interpretation quite frequently.
Nowhere in here though does it, I mean, because most of this is because also you're trying to update according to current state law, right, or changing the state law.
Some of it is, so some of it is in the sense of there are specific amendments to the SB9, which is the 2 units, and it's really just because for ADUs, the government code section moves, so we're just taking out some numbers and putting in some numbers. For density bonus, the state has very specific things that they have changed, and those are in here. Whether or not the ordinance has those in there, we still have to follow them, but it's easier when it's in an ordinance because it's easier for staff, it's easier for the public, it's right there, and it's not in the government code, which is very difficult to read, and you have to go throughout it. To me, really makes sense. And then there are uses that we are required to change within our zoning ordinance. So that would be community care facilities, which is, let's say, a sober living facility or support housing, where you're helping, let's say, people that can't live on their own. And so those are required by state law. They're required to have space for emergency shelters. So all of those things, and then again, our religious assemblies, that's required from federal law. So those things we've changed to line up as well. And we're following we are following that now because we're required to do so, but it's not in our code, which again makes it harder for everyone. So this is just, again, well, it shouldn't meet law, right? But it's to make it easier for everyone to read and understand.
Well, thank you. I remember when you presented, and so thank you. I appreciate all the work and the cleanup. Can we open the public hearing then at 7:43? And do we have any public comments?
No speakers online and no speakers in the chambers.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:43. Is there any further discussion from the commission on this item? And is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt 7.2 zoning ordinance amendment. Legislative updates. Use of and
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed and abstentions? No. Okay. That's approved, and then the next one, 7.3, rezoning for the future annexation of property located at 1285 McCray Street. Do we have a staff report?
I'm gonna give the closure, and then also, if I may, Vice Chair, at the beginning of the meeting, I failed to assist you, but I would just like to announce for the public, anyone watching the video, it was noticed at the top of our agenda that the public hearing for conditional use permit 2025-4 for the San Benito Polytechnic Academy is continued to a date certain of September 25th, 2025, for the regular planning commission meeting. So that was in the newspaper, that hearing, it will be continued to that.
Thank you.
Is that going to be the approval of the CUP?
Yes, it'll be a public hearing for consideration of the approval for the project needs some more consideration, and so we'll just ask requesting the hearing to continue. So for the commission, so if we continue to a date certain and announce the date through the proper noticing procedures, we do not have to notice again in the newspaper or to the 300-foot notice. And that does have a cost when we pay for this publication. So it's important for this one that it can continue for all interested and to accept the review. Item 7.3 is the rezoning application number 2025-3 for the property located at 1285 McCray Street, which contains an existing gas station, which is the Toro Petroleum Station. This project, 1285 McCray Street, it's in our general commercial general plan designation, and it is fully surrounded by the city limits. It's an unincorporated admin parcel, fully surrounded by the city limits. It's right at the end of former McCray and Prospect right of way. To the north of it is the brand new Alter Farm Shopping Center, and to the south, you can see on the screen is 1500, that's your Schwab, and we're right by Rancho Middle School, so that's to orient the commission. For a little background on where this is coming from, this is a city-initiated annexation request. And where this is coming from is that on October 15th, oh, my slide is wrong, October 15th of 2024, the city council authorized the city manager to enter into an agreement for the sale of adjacent surplus property, which is former right of way. You can see on this screen highlighted the adjacent surplus property and then the triangular subject property at 1285. That the city went through the surplus land process to get rid of this right of way with the development of Hollister Farms. This right of way for the end of McCray is no longer needed by the city, and so it was put up for sale through that process. And then the city has entered into an agreement with the buyer, who happens to be the neighboring parcel owner who owns the subject property tonight, which is 1285 McCray. And in the negotiations for the sale and the agreement that the city entered with the buyer, the property owner agreed to annex this island property that's currently not in the city limits. So they will annex their gas station in order to purchase this property from the city. And then as part of the agreement, because the buyer agreed to do that for the city agreed to facilitate this annexation process on their behalf. The city council did authorize the initiation of this rezoning application. That's one of the steps required, and I have a slide a little bit later to talk through all of the kind of process for how we propose annexation all the way to the end. But the council authorized this application to proceed on August 18th of this year with resolution 25. The services for this property it is currently served by city water, so they currently receive city water. It has a septic tank, so it is not on city septic services or sewer services, excuse me. it's important to note that annexation, switching jurisdictions does not require an immediate connection to the city's sewer services. However, annexation does facilitate a future connection. Future connection would require annexation. So if, for instance, and do have this happen occasionally, septic tanks expire, they need to be repaired or replaced, they could fail. And because if the nearest connection point is the city services, they have to go through this lengthy and can be costly annexation process before that service connection can happen. And so what will facilitate a future need to connect this annexation kind of preempt that and make that process in the future, if it's needed, easier. And I will say also, not only is it the city's policy, but it's also the region's policy in the effort to protect our groundwater to get out of septic tanks on smaller properties. I believe the size is 2 acres. So properties that are less than 2 acres, the regional board for our water district, the water board, wants to move out of septic tanks from those smaller properties. So this annexation will facilitate that future connection. And then the property will be served by citizens. For a little bit of background, I mentioned we're on a different item, but the city is in the process of updating our general plan. And on August 4th of 2025, the city council adopted a resolution for a temporary annexation policy. What this policy does is state that no new annexation or general plan applications will be accepted or processed until the city's general plan update is complete. And the reasoning behind this is that we talked a little bit about CEQA, the environmental report for the city's general plan document is underway. And anytime that you're doing an annexation or general plan amendment or really any property, but we'll talk about this one, that's going to have an impact on that city project, which at this point has cost about $2.5 million. And so the city council's goals are to complete that project without further delay or impact by a private proposal for annexation. So that's why they adopted this policy. They had a motion in place, and this policy allowed it to be in writing. So it kind of continued what was already happening from the previous motion, but that policy is in place. And in that policy, this annexation was exempted because it's easily initiated based on the sale, and it's also, there's no development proposed, there are no changes to the annexed property, the gas station exists, it will continue to be a gas station. So there's nothing from an environmental impact that will affect the city's general plan document that's being prepared. And so the city council did find that annexation of this property in particular will not have an effect on the general plan update, and so they allowed it to proceed forward. With regard to the environmental review and the planning commission's consideration of this project and then the council's ultimate consideration of the free zone, staff has found that this, because again, there's no development proposed, no modification to the site being proposed, that this rezoning application does qualify for a simple exemption for existing facilities under section 15301 of the CEQA guidelines. And then just for the planning commission's information, the city of Hollister's annexation process first requires a request for initiation of rezoning for annexation. So this is something that's unique to the city of Hollister. It's not a mandate of the process, but what this does is it allows applicants to, at a much cheaper cost of the application fee itself, go to the council and say, I would like to do this before I get down a potentially 1 year, 2 year process. It's very expensive. What do you think? Like, do you want to allow me to do this? So we have an initiation pre-zoning requirement, and then that initiation goes to the council, and by a vote of the council, they authorize the application to be filed. Then the application is filed, and we do the environmental review. Again, this is all been facilitated by staff through this process of reviewing the sale. And so now we are at step 4, which is where the planning commission considers to make a recommendation to the council based on the project. Then the council would consider the rezoning, which is a zoning map amendment. And that is an ordinance, so it requires a first and second reading, and the council would also authorize the application for annexation to be submitted to LAFCO, which is our local agency formation commission. LAFCO is the actual board that approves whether or not the annexation happens. So the city council gives the site a zoning designation, because if it was annexed, we'd like this to be general commercial. LAFCO will annex the project, and then if LAFCO annexes it, it will be zoned general commercial in the city of Foster's limits. And then LAFCO does some filing of the completion of the project and the decision, and then ultimately LAFCO files the maps with the state board of equalization who adjust taxes. Yes, so this site is designated in our general plan, general commercial, and the pre-zoning is proposed to be our general commercial zoning district. Which is consistent. So that's what's being considered tonight is whether or not to pre-zone to general.
Is that also the, I don't know exactly what that means just like the Hollister Farms.
Yeah, so Hollister Farms, right to the north of it is also zone general commercial, our Schwab and Walgreens and commercial. It is a commercial only zoning designation. A gas station is allowed use in that zoning district. Also allows for retail. All of our uses that Erica just talked about in 1708 is our commercial. So all of the uses that are allowed in general commercial, that's what it's for. But yeah, it's essentially, you know, a retail, your Target parking lot, that's general commercial use.
You said board of equal,
Yes, the Board of Equalization.
so, being that LAFCO is made up of 2 county board of supervisors, I can just tell you, being the former planning commissioner on the county, that this is not very favorable for the county. Because of tax revenue, the gas station. That is one of the very few gas stations. Is there any way, any amendments that we can make with faith, being that each jurisdiction is kind of a financial crisis, to kind of acknowledge that is much needed revenue for the county? Is that something that we could recommend to city council? Because
So the city and the county have an adopted tax sharing agreement, which allows for it is an agreement that the Board of Supervisors has adopted, the city of Hollister, the city council's adopted, which says for commercial properties, the city will get this much tax revenue, property tax, and the county will get this much property tax. I will also say that LAFCO's mandate is through state law. They are a regional body. They don't serve the city of Hollister or the city. Obviously, we're a small region. You know, politics are politics, but LAFCO's a regional body has a mandate to preserve agriculture, and one of their mandates is to not create islands. To be straightforward with you, for when this annexation of the Hollister Farms and some of the residential to the east and some of the surrounding lands happened back in, I want to say like 2009 or something like that. The carve out of this island should not have happened. Because it created an island which is against LAFCO's mandate. So the correction and annexation of this island is in support not only by the tax sharing agreement that we have, so the county will get their share of taxes in the future on jurisdictional change, but it will also be in alignment with LAFCO.
right, and I understand that the whole LAFCO, you know, for this supervisor, that the LAFCO had, in theory, it's great, but the reality is, the question would be, does this lead, right? I know this is tax sharing, I think it's like 70-30. I think the city gets 70, the county gets 30. I don't know exactly.
Someone's doing this to the other.
But either way, what I'm trying to set a precedent of kind of good faith, like annexations, because right now, there are islands that exist within the city, and, you know, this future commercial development, the county's inevitably gonna want to keep those islands or those things. So I'm trying to, is there anything that we can do to say, hey, this is what we recommend to city council, 50/50 tax sharing agreement for this parcel, a variance, and it's a variance, and it's a development agreement, exact wording, there's nothing that we can set, you know, no language we can set.
Well, I mean, kind of, it is what you've been saying, it will be a recommendation to the city council, so if you as a board decided that you wanted to recommend amending the commercial tax sharing agreement just for this particular person, you could recommend that to the city council, and they can decide whether or not to do that. And then they and the board of supervisors would have to agree to that different tax sharing agreement just for that particular person.
I personally, just seeing the way this county has operated, to me, I mean, there's no county officials here, but to me, it's just, if I was sitting, because I have some, the opposite, I would just be like, yeah, sure, I'm wearing my laptop hat, sure, why not? The reality is there's two county supervisors sitting there, they're gonna have to answer their constituents for a budget shortfall. And this is surely gonna add to that budget shortfall, that I would like to recommend with this particular parcel, because there's only 2 gas stations, and, you know, a 50/50 action agreement or something that is not gonna burden some of the county. Like,
I mean, I don't know. I'm curious of the actual revenue for the small gas station. I mean, I told I would imagine like probably like gas would I don't know. I'm assuming, but yeah, at the end of the day, the board of supervisors in the city, I wasn't necessarily able to do that change, and I said that it doesn't matter whether you get the city. Right. So,
And we're city of Hollis, we're representing.
no,
City of
absolutely,
Hollis.
I've represented the city of Hollister, but there's historically kind of been a bad faith precedent on both municipalities, for kind of a good faith policy, a good faith that, hey, we're trying to amend that with the relationships going forward. Absolutely, I'm sitting here looking, this is very much favorable to the city. I'm just throwing it out there, want the board to be aware.
I think if the supervisors were interested in that conversation, they should bring it up. I'm not saying it's a bad decision. The council and the board of supervisors. Yeah, if it's a concern for them, I think they should. Personally, I think the annexation makes sense to me.
Is today our, I mean, we could add that, but today our task, right, is to approve this rezoning for future annexation.
So if I,
Or to make a recommendation.
To make a recommendation to it, right.
I would like,
It's within the city's sphere of influence, and it's ultimately part of the LAFCO recommendation. And I think also part of the bylaws, if I'm not mistaken, have to do with the tagline rule limits. This is obviously outside of that, so it's almost it's consistent over the process.
Is there other discussion?
no, that was kind of my concern. It sounds like if I were to put a recommendation or kind of like a discussion topic for taxation, I would not have board support or, you know.
And I think it would be good, I mean, I can just briefly finish on my staff report and it would be questions, and then it probably would make much sense to open the public hearing, close it, and then return for more
Absolutely.
discussion. So just, that was my last slide before the recommendation, so I'll just say that planning commission has a few options. Our recommendation as staff is the first, which would be to adopt the draft resolution as written with the findings that are contained, and that would be to recommend city council approve the rezoning. You could also amend those findings as you see fit, but still recommend approval to the city council in a different form or with a different recommendation. as well as approval, you could adopt a resolution recommending the city council deny the pre-zone, or if you'd like some more clarification or information from staff, we can continue the hearing. And we are then recommending approval of the resolution that would recommend the city council. And provide some findings.
My apologies, we didn't let you finish.
It is okay, this was just my process one, and I'm happy to take questions.
Do you all want to go ahead and finish the public hearing and then we come back to the discussion for Rockland? So I will now open the public hearing at 8:04. And do we have any public comments?
We have no speakers in the chambers and no speakers online.
And we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 8:04. And now, is there any further discussion from the commission on this item? We wanted to.
Yeah, I guess I'll just finish off with this, which historically during the institutional dysfunction within this community, this county. I would just like to kind of, how would I legally semantically word that, if you guys can help me, adding, at least bringing it up to the discussion of the city council, that this is something that has historically been, and this is why we have these items, that should we talk about in action, at least for the.
So that would be, if you were to add that, it would be like, number 2.
It could even be number 1, and then, so you're adopting a resolution recommending the council approval with the findings contained and directing staff to inform the commission of this position. And I would be fine with me, and I understand the position, if you would like to. Make a motion.
Anyone else have anything else to say?
I mean, my final comment is, I appreciate the sentiments from Commissioner, but I think it's a little bit of a kind of one to know what happened, just kind of, if I was sitting on that board, you would have to open up the statute again, that would probably discussion, right, because there's other implications with other elements throughout the county, potential growth, commercial development. I think it might get a little bit complicated. I personally believe, informally, you can talk to your city council representative, and let them lead that negotiation. I think we probably should.
Will this recommendation for the process will create more work? I just want to.
I would say no, it wouldn't. If you would like to make a motion that includes a direction for staff to give this additional information, we're happy to do so out of the staff report, or we just take the motion being seconded and adopted.
So we'll just be giving the message.
Okay.
But it wouldn't necessarily be like if they don't negotiate, then it's not approved.
So that was part of the process.
Absolutely.
Yes, I suppose depending on what the pleasure of the commission is, how sternly your recommendation wants to be of, if you do this, we recommend approval. If you don't do this, we don't recommend approval, then that might be more in the two, like kind of changing what your recommendation actually is. But if your recommendation is kind of approval, but we'd like to tell staff, can you inform them of our discussion as well? That's easy, but neither will belabor the process, just clarification of the motion.
What prompted this application?
Yes, so this is prompted by the city entering into a sale agreement, and it was the city's council's request to annex this property, so that informs your decision on that motion. It is the city council initiative of desiring this island likely related to sales tax of a gas station that probably, and we have policies of not wanting to have islands, of annexing our islands, it's also backwards goals. But also considered a revenue in their desire to negotiate that with the property.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt the resolution 7.3 with recommending letting municipal entities possible sales tax laws, I don't know how to.
And so it's that way, it's different, I mean, just throwing it out.
Okay.
But I think what I heard is, if she would inform them of our discussion.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But if we're like hard and fast of like, they've gotta, do the sales tax agreement and,
We're not opposed.
well, we're not, first of all, the second of all, like, that's.
Or you can advise on policy, but I don't think, I mean, taxing agreement is not even really.
I guess I would just remind you that the next stop is the city council. So they are the ones who will consider your recommendation.
So my recommendation,
And they're the ones that.
what I'm just saying, I would just like to recommend city council to acknowledge that that the county will be losing money from this annexation. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense. I think I'm trying to.
That's based on prior experience or from information that they're gonna lose.
The county is gonna lose money because if we annex this in, sales tax agreement is 70% for the city, 30% for the county.
That's not a recommendation.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
so-
and that taxing agreement doesn't change regardless of the annexation. The taxing agreement is still in place.
But I'm saying for this particular parcel that we annexed in, what I'm trying to articulate is to be aware of that. I don't know, so that way we could annex more properties in the future. Because we run the risk in the future of trying to annex more properties, the county, oh, you know what?
So your motion would be.
I guess I'm asking, essentially, how would I make this motion? How can I try to articulate it?
I mean, it sounds to me like we would move to adopt the resolution recommending the city council approve the pre-zone, with an additional recommendation that the city council consider amending the tax agreement.
Correct.
That's one number two, right?
I think it's kind of number one and another recommendation, which is also fine. Or number two, it's okay. So what the motion on the table is to adopt the draft resolution recommending approval to the council and also make a recommendation as a statement, if you will, to the council that the planning commission recommends the council consider a specific tax unit in this property and not using it.
Is there a second? And if there's not a second, then the motion fails. Is there another motion? Dr. is recommending approval. And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
I'm in favor.
Okay, aye. Okay, anyone opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're good. We're good. Thank you. Let's move on to planning commission reports. Does anyone have any reports? Starting welcoming our two new commissioners. Maybe. Anything else? Any other, you want to say anything?
Oh, no, it's a real pleasure to work with everyone, excited, so. Full background, in scope of urban planning, San Francisco State, so. Happy to be here.
Happy, thank you. I don't have anything.
No, I mean, but actually, I was hoping that on the advice of staff, is I would like to see if there's a potential to consider any agenda items to actually go over the process. For basically to help inform our understanding on the permitting, the plan check, engineering, how all that works. Any pre-approval process, because I'm certainly kind of I mean, I've heard plenty of small business owner, right, so a lot of people I know, on the downtown. And I talked to a lot of businesses, and so there's been a lot of conversations about the issues with funding. I can't say that they're right or wrong, right, because I haven't dealt with that side for 10 years now. So I'd like to get updates. I mean, I know there was an issue with Panera Bread, so even just a bonus as confidence is really better and understanding how that plays out. Yeah, hopefully that's it.
And then do we have, staff, do we have any reports or any planning division reports?
Yes, sorry, just trying to make notes on the motions. I can definitely work on putting something together, a presentation for the commission on the processes for permits that the commission sees, and then some of the administrative things that you won't see that are processed by staff. We can work on that. And then, I know we had a legislative update at the beginning of the year, I think, with the city attorney's office. But it could be good to work on putting that onto a future agenda. Again, I know we've had with the budget, that the state adopted, they adopted some new laws that took effect, and we obviously had quite a few laws come into effect on January 1st, and we talked about before, but it would have been so I think we can work on a couple of items, just background, and we can put it on the agenda that is lighter on the development items, the project items, we can turn it around.
Yeah, there's a lot of implications on the technical piece of this section that we keep, that because, you know, we have an impasse that technically like it's going to be scheduled. Understand, you can't require a project to mitigate, that technically steps with us, but now all of these amendments of the legislation, you know, the laws, and it kind of takes a look at the value aspect, we're now trying to figure out how to interpret that, and how that applies to what it's like. So yeah, all of that is really, yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely work on these. I'll try not to go too in depth, but also in depth. I can talk about, it's a lot. We can potentially talk about a study session. I know we're looking to the end of the year and, you know, holidays and things, it's just the time to prep. So we'll try and work on what would be the best timing to get this before you guys, but also making sure that we can be, you know, not just throwing something together, but actually. So we can definitely work on that. And then I was gonna give just a brief update. At the last meeting, Chair Long had asked for some info on the planning commissioner's stipend. I did look into that with the city clerk. You know, Commissioner Long is not here tonight, but we could not find any of the adopting documents. So the stipend, as our current commissioner will know, but our new commissioners, if you didn't know, it's $25 a meeting. It would have at some point been adopted by the city council, and to amend that, it would be a city council amendment. So that's the only real update on that. I unfortunately wasn't able to find any of the clerks any real like documents. More than it's $25 is what we know. I think that's my only updates. I would just like to also reiterate welcome both our new commissioners to the commission. It's exciting to have 5 commissioners. We have not had a full board of 5 in quite some time. So good to have you here. Look forward to working with you. And I may be biased, but the planning commission is very good. So it's exciting to have new commissioners on board.
Thank you. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to the item.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you.
meeting